Okay, welcome back. And today we're going to learn the basics about UVs by making a building. We're going to make a real simple building and we're going to talk about how to texturize it using UVs. And you may be wondering what a UV is. So first I'll bring up this real simple cube here. And on this cube you see that we have these faces. We have an X. So down here we have an X, an up and down Y, and then a Z coordinate system. So Cartesian coordinate system. And a UV basically is that same thing when you think about it applied to just the face itself right here. Except instead of adding confusion by referring it to X, Y, and Z, it is now referred to as U, V, and W. And typically we just worry about the U and the V and not the W because it's two-dimensional, it's 2D, and it's referred to as UVs. Okay, so one thing that we're going to want to do is talk about textures. If you go to this website, textures.com, you can find a lot of different textures on here. You'll have to set up an account and log in, and they have these credits. You can also pay for credits to get some premium access to higher quality textures, but the free ones are fairly high quality as it is. And since we're going to be doing a building, I pulled up buildings here under their search, and you can see that they have a lot of different categories. And then I chose high rise, and under high rise, you have some more categories. And glass, tower, office, night scenes, even if you're making a night scene building, residential, things like that, towers. So if we took a look at maybe an office building, give me a second to catch up here. You'll see that there's a lot of different textures that we could choose from. In this case, there are about 350. And if you selected on one, the chances are there's a couple different choices to go with. I like to use ones that are kind of ready to use, more centered. This one is a little bit off. You see you have uneven borders here. I would, for the type of project that we're going to work on, I would go with this one right here. It's a little bit easier to use and align. These you can still use. You may have to do a little bit of tweaking inside of an editing program like Photoshop, and you may even just want to use one window. It just depends on what your project's going to be. And with your free credits, you can download some of these. You have to log in to download. And then they have higher quality ones, and you can see they're premium only. Those take more credits, and you can purchase credits as well. But on a daily basis, you get 15 credits. And there are many other types of textures. Another way to do it is you can go out onto Google and onto the internet and search for building facades. I typed in building facade textures, and you can see I have a lot that came up. One thing you need to remember, though, is copyright. Some of these materials are copyrighted and owned by individuals. Some are free, and free for use, so you need to make sure you understand what you're doing with the texture when you're going to start using it. And you'll also find some where people have already kind of broken them out into UV sets so that you can use them. Again, these may cost money or they may be free, but then again, they also have a copyright to them, and there may be some stipulations for use. So just be aware of that. And another thing we want to talk about is once you get started and you start having textures, coming up with different textures, you may want to put a folder together that contains your textures and then organize it so that you can more quickly find the different textures that you're looking for. In this case, I'll be using this one for my building facades. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. This is going to just be a real simple sort of a rectangular shaped building. Nothing complicated this time out, so that we can also talk about UVs and how UVs work. So to get set up, we want to make sure that we're in our project. So set your project window. So go in, give it a name, hit new, give it a name, put it in a location, and then hit accept to set the project window up. And then go back in under file, set project, and I'm going to set my project under my city buildings, and I'm going to set it. And then I'm going to save this as, I always like to do a save scene as at the beginning just to get started. And this is going to be buildings number 3. And I'll do a save as, and now you can see that my current project is set up under my Maya project, city building scenes, and building number 3. So again, like I said, it's going to be a pretty simple project. I have autosave turned on. You may see that pop up from time to time. If you're curious about autosave, go up to Windows, Settings and Preferences, and then Files and Projects. And then pretty close to the top here, it says autosave. You want to enable it. And then you have some other controls to set up how autosave behaves. Okay, so again, little cube. I'm going to change the number of subdivisions I have, so that it's basically 1 per side. And this is going to be, these are both going to be low poly buildings. They're not going to be very high in poly because, again, these are going to be textured to look like buildings from a distance. If you get up close to them, you'll see that they're not highly detailed, but they make good background buildings for other scenes and shots and things like that. And I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit. It's probably a little taller than I want it to be. All right. All right, so this is just, like I said, a simple rectangle. And now that we've got that set up, there are other methods because this is such a simple shape that we could texturize this, but I want to introduce UVs, and using a simple shape is probably the best way for the first time out. So under modeling, click UV and UV editor, and this screen will come up. Right now the checkers are turned on. We can turn that off, and there are no images. So right here, you can turn images on or off. Don't have any on assigned right now. So my building is just that, and you can see that if I go to faces and hover over the different faces, you can see how they correspond to here inside my UV editor. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to break these sides out a little bit. I'm going to separate the side of the building from the top and the bottom of the building. And go to edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that. I'm going to just select the individual sides. And it doesn't seem to want to work. So we'll go ahead and you gotta be careful to make sure that you don't select any of the wrong sides. So I'll just go ahead and individually select the 4 sides for the top. And when you opened up UV Editor, this tool also probably opened up, maybe it was docked or it's free floating like it is in my screen. And when you first open it up, it probably looks something like this. So what we're going to do is, now that I've highlighted those 4, I want to use cut. So under the cut and sew, I'm going to cut. You can see over here when I highlighted those sides, the sides of the building along with the top of the building all highlighted as well. Now, once I did that, I've basically separated this top from the sides, but that doesn't mean that I can necessarily move them unless I go to UV shell. And now I can pull the top off. So I have the top right there. I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. I'm going to go back to edge mode. I'm going to select the 4 side edges along the bottom. Make sure that I've got the ones selected, just those. Okay. You can see again, here's the bottom and the corresponding sides. And again, I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to switch back to UV shell. I'm going to select the bottom and I'm going to slide it out and put it down here so I can keep track. Right now I'm just moving things out of the way. Later on, we'll get everything organized and move back into this first quad here, and I'll explain the reason for that shortly. All right, so now we can see we have 3 sides here. If I go back to face mode, you can see that there's 3 there, but then I got this one just kind of hanging out there by itself, right there. And I want all of these connected. So what we're going to do is go to edge again, and I'm going to select one of these edges that corresponds to that square there. You can see this is highlighted and that's highlighted. So this is really connected, but it doesn't appear to be that way here on the screen. And what I want to do is I want to sew and move it. In this case, that doesn't seem to be an option here under the tool set. It might be under one of these other down buttons. We also have our menu across the top. We have cut and sew, and we could use these just as well. And then you could also hold down your right mouse button and you'll end up with the tools here. I want to go to cut and sew. In this case, I want to move and sew it. So I want it to physically move from its location and stitch itself, or be sewed rather, to this section here. And now you can see I have all 4 of my sides connected, and then here are my 2 tops. If I go back to UV shell, I'm going to rotate this up a little bit, kind of make it as straight as I can get it. I had a lot of luck with that. All right. So this little tool here, Straighten UV, helps me get it a little bit better organized. And then I'm just going to put the top and bottom back over here as well. And at this point, I'm going to turn the checker back on. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that the checkers are, first off, square. See how they're elongated here into rectangles? I don't want that. I want them to be more like squares like I have on the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go back to my UV shell, select the sides, and I am going to adjust this until I get those to be square shaped. And that's pretty good right there, maybe just a little bit more. Oh, that's better right there. So now I have it square shaped, and you can see that by shrinking the UV here, it makes the squares over here get larger. And at some point, we can remanipulate them. But what I want to do also is get the squares the same size on both the top, sides, and bottom. The bottom isn't really going to be seen, but just for the whole sake of the layout, I'm going to also make sure that I get it to be about the same. So in this case, since I want to make those squares bigger, I need to make this top smaller. And I'm going to slowly make the top smaller until I get these squares roughly the same size. And that seems to probably be fairly close. All right, and do the same thing for the bottom. Like I said, not really going to be seen, but just for the sake of everything being even, I'm going to go ahead and get them lined up fairly close. That looks fairly good. Just a little bit. Maybe there. All right, that ought to be good enough. So now, and we're also looking to make sure we don't have any distortions. We don't want the squares to be, again, all skewed and out of alignment, or or distorted. You know, you might have a set of perfectly shaped squares and then you have this weird distortion on one side. That would be an indicator that there's something wrong with that section of the model, and we would have to work to try to fix it. All right, I'm going to turn these off for a second so we can see the squares. And now, even though they're already in here, we have another tool that would help us move them back in and to align everything. It's under Modify. And then you can go here to Layout, and it would automatically lay them out for you. And what it's done is it's also reshaped them for me and just undid everything I just did. Awesome. So let's go ahead and undo that. And I'll just manually lay them out. So not going to take up a lot of this space, but we want to make sure that all of our UVs fit into this first square. It's called the 0 to 1. And we want to make sure that all of our UVs fit into that area. So now I'm just going to get them close. And there we have that. And now I'm going to show you how to export it. And after we do the export piece of it, I'm going to end this video and then I'll start up with another video showing what to do next. Okay, so to export it, what I'm going to do is there's a little camera up here on the top. I'm going to click on that camera and it gives me an option of naming it, which I do want to do, and where to put it. Obviously, it opened up to one of my last projects. That's not where I want it to go. So what I want to do instead is go to my current project, which is City Buildings, and I want to put it in my images. And you can see I have a UV map from a previous project, so from a previous building. I want to make sure I name it for this one, and this is building number 3. And I'm going to go ahead and save it for that. And now I'm going to come back. My image format, I'm going to save it as a PNG. This is important right here, your size X and your size Y. 2048 and 2048, so 2048 for our aspect ratio. And when we go to open it in Photoshop, we want to make sure that we set our project to that same size, so we want to remember this number. Everything else we're going to leave at default, and we're going to go ahead and hit apply and close. And now what we should have back in our project folder under images are our UVs right here. And it didn't come out. Only the one square did. Let me go back and see why. Oh, all right. So if we select everything, that's an important step I forgot. We gotta make sure we have everything selected. Only the things that you have selected are actually going to be exported. So let's try that again. And I'm going to just go ahead and keep the same name and save it over the top of the last one. Color edges, you have choices. You can change them. As you saw, that one was blue. Now I'm going to hit apply and close. I'm going to overwrite it. It's always fun to make mistakes, so I can show you how not to make the same mistake. And now if I take a look at it, you can see that I have my building sides and I have my top and bottom of my building. Okay, so now that we've got them saved, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here, and we'll talk more about what to do with this and how to add the texture in the next video.